President Mahama accused the previous government of ending the year with a headline inflation of 23.8%, above the IMF target of 18%. This divergence indicated showed a poor performance of monetary policy.
Abusuya nanu ya ena the nation builder ura JDM edit the State of the Nation address ebe tu Ghana fu nyina yete sene omani mu ayeden eho ena endra eye NPP eye minority in parliament omu leader by Afenyo Markins ena ne dom eno so be ma press conference bi abusuya mo kire mu se ura JDM State of the Nation address ode bre Ghana fu nyina eye propaganda nkwa bi be wo ha nsem bi wo ha na oka abusuya no kwarba akose kura na enim eni nti Omankasa, the NPP minority leaders, Omo Abema, the true State of the Nation address, Abusuya, in some wakande, YNTB, na was what you're doing, Efasa Ansama, Omabekano, Eho.
That acknowledged challenges in 2022, the remarkable turnaround as a result of the decisive policies of the MPP government, supported by the IMF, and the challenges still remaining that will require steadfastness from the new government. And when this is backed by a clarion call by the president to Ghanaians to support him and his new government to consolidate the gains, you would have had consensus across the political divide to drive the Building Back Better agenda for Ghana. But what did we get from the president? Rather, he chose to do propaganda. And we can assure you that this propaganda will come to hit and hurt him hard. President Mahama accused the previous government of ending the year with a headline inflation of 23.8%, above the IMF target of 18%. This divergence indicated showed a poor performance of monetary policy. Isn't this the typical story of the glass being either half empty or half full? If one looks at the fact that the COVID and Russia-Ukraine war crisis-driven inflation rose to 54% at the end of 2022 and dropped sharply to 23% at the end of 2023, that's within 12 months, then a headline inflation of 23% should be seen as a significant positive performance. Of course, not at the medium-term target yet, but the disinflation process is on track. It is also instructive to note that the IMF has an upper band of 22% for inflation for December 2024. This suggests a rather marginal deviation compared to the program target, contrary to what President Mahama wants us to believe. If such a marginal deviation from the disinflation path is bad, then the president is the worst culprit. When his last government deviated from an inflation target of 10.1% by achieving 15.4% at the end of December 2016. For those who are familiar with Ghana's program with the IMF, these minor deviations from the program targets are sometimes normal, because we are dealing with a very uncertain economic environment. And deviations like this can always be explained when one analyzes the data. Per the rules of the program, we will need to enter into consultations with the fund as provided by the consultation clause, so that both the government and the fund can assess what went wrong and see the way forward. President Mahama has shot himself in the foot by his rush to paint this situation as bad, and soon we will see how he recovers from it. What the president also failed to do was to inform the people of Ghana that there are other significant measures of the performance of the economy that informs the state of the nation, other than inflation alone. Real GDP growth, trade balance, current account balance, and international reserves, the performance of the financial sector, among others. These are the important components of our economy. That is the real sector, the external sector, in the financial sector. The average growth in real GDP for the first 3 quarters of 2024 was 6.4% and expected to end the year at a rate above the IMF target of 4%. This trend outperformed all projections and revised projections by both the IMF and the World Bank. If this is bad by President Mahamad's standard, see the president's previous record. In 2016, the economy grew by 3.4%. It was 4% the year before. And so if you call 6.4% bad, how about 3.4%, ladies and gentlemen? He underperformed by all standards, whilst President Akufo Addo overperformed. The trade balance also shows a significant economic improvement, maintaining a surplus trend since 2017, ending 2024 with a surplus of 5.9% of GDP. If this is bad economy, let's consider President Mahamad's record of a deficit of 2% of GDP. Surplus 5.9% of GDP at the end of 2024, compared with a deficit 2% of GDP at the end of 2016. The current account balance also ended 2024 with a surplus of 4.2% of GDP, the very few times in recent history to have a surplus current account. And such a surplus tells us of the strength of the external payments positions of the country. Throughout the history of when President Mahama was in office, and without any confluence of crisis as faced by the previous MPP government, the current account was consistently in deficit, and he ended 2016 with a deficit of 3.1% of GDP. So again, let's compare 4.2% surplus by the end of 2024 against 3.1% deficit by the end of 2016. Gross international reserves measure the resilience of the economy, particularly in times of crisis, and how prepared the country is to weather external shocks and vulnerabilities. The Bank of Ghana has, through novel innovations, accumulated high levels of reserves, the largest in our history, with $8.9 billion. This is 4 months of import cover, above the IMF's 3 months of import cover. The NDC left office in 2016 with gross international reserves of $6.2 billion, or 3.5 months of import cover. Again, 4 months of import cover versus 3.5 months of import cover. Who is better managing the economy of Ghana? Ladies and gentlemen, the true state of our nation is that economic growth has rebounded strongly. The external sector is impressive, and our resilience towards shocks and external vulnerabilities is at all-time high. This is the true state of our economy, but the president and his government has a different understanding of what a strong economy means. President Mahama again cited the headline inflation of 23.8% and the 19% rate of depreciation of the cedi for 2024 as indicators of a badly managed economy. It's important to provide context to this. Following the COVID-19 and supply shocks globally, prices of food and other essentials increased substantially. Even in the advanced countries, inflation averaged 7%, very high for countries that are used to 1% or less inflation. The causes of this rise in inflation globally were not far-fetched. For example, COVID-19 slowed down the world economy due to lockdowns and the closure of factories and offices, including major port facilities across the world. And this adversely impacted global supply chains. Also, many countries implemented fiscal stimulus to revive economic activity. However, faced with supply constraints, the increased demand resulting from the fiscal stimulus led to higher inflation. To control inflation, the central banks of many countries, led by the advanced economies, resorted to monetary tightening by increasing rates. This led to significant investment reversals from small open economies like Ghana, weakening our currency and fueling the rise in inflation. This, together with imported inflation, pushed Ghana's inflation sharply to 54% by the end of 2022. The current rate of 23%, therefore, means that inflation was halved within a year, and we were working to bring it further down to the pre-COVID level of 8 plus or minus 2% by 2026. Whilst 23% is still high, the effort to bring it down from 54% has been significant. It must be noted that before COVID-19 struck the world, the MPP demonstrated a record in inflation management. We brought inflation down from 15.4% in 2016, handed over to us by President Mahama, to 11.8% in 2017, 9.4% in 2018, 7.9% in 2019. Inflation for 2 successive years remained a single digit, the largest period in our recent economic history. The effect of the pandemic began to be felt from 2020, when inflation rose to 10.4% in 2020, 12.6% in 2021, and then to 54% at the peak of the global economic crisis in 2022. Even laymen can understand this. How the current managers of the economy cannot understand this can only be born out of political dishonesty. The adverse circumstances the MPP administration faced were unprecedented, but said did not exist when President Mahama's government achieved headline inflation of 15.4%, above the target of 10.1% in 2016. We know that there is an inverse relationship between inflation and the strength of a currency. A higher depreciation of the currency will automatically pass through to inflation in developing economies like Ghana. This means that inflation will also be higher, and the reverse also holds. Therefore, following the sharp depreciation of the cedi in 2022 by 50%, inflation was also going to rise sharply. This strong pass-through would naturally be a major challenge for the managers of the economy. By reducing the rate of depreciation to 19% in 2024, we have seen the muting of the pass-through to inflation, and these efforts cannot be glossed over. These efforts by the previous administration and the favorable results produced should be appreciated by President Mahama and improved for even better outcomes for our people. These effective efforts should not be disregarded and belittled for political reasons. As a country, we gain nothing by this kind of politics. Ladies and gentlemen, it is important to note that the rate of 6.5% depreciation we have witnessed year to date in 2025 is not informed by any sustainable strategies by the current government. The current disparity between inflation and the rate of depreciation is evidence of heavy central bank intervention on the market. The Mahama administration and the central bank can do this, but this is happening only because the previous administration left a gross international reserve of $8.9 billion by the end of 2024. This is being used to shore up the value of the cedi. The president deliberately, as you know, avoided this in his statement. Fellow Ghanaians, the true state of the nation is that exchange rate stability, which we saw before the end of 2024 and which has continued into the first quarter of this year, is not by any magic from the Mahama government. It is because the Akufo Addo government left significant levels of international reserves for them. In addressing the issue of buffers created to support expenditure and maturing debt obligations, the president focused on the sinking fund as if it is the only source of buffers. The sinking fund is just one of our buffers. At each point in time, the government designates some accounts for buffer and for purposes of special payments. In the last 8 years, such accounts included the sinking fund, the Eurobond proceeds account, the IMF proceeds account, and the Treasury Main 2 account. For example, the IMF third review disbursement of $360 million was done on 2nd December 2024, but this was kept as buffer, part of which was used to pay coupons amounting to $346 million to Eurobond holders on 3rd January 2025. This was not done from the sinking fund. Similarly, in October 2024, we paid $520 million to our Eurobond holders for the first coupons and other fees. But again, this was not done from the sinking fund. How could we have done these payments if we didn't have buffers? Yet the president thinks that the only buffers we have is the sinking fund. The MPP also left significant amount of buffers, more than 5 billion Ghana cedis from the 2024 revenue collected by GRA in the Treasury Main 2 accounts, which the new government has used. Yet the president failed to talk about it and focus only on the sinking fund. That all the main components of our economy are in good shape. The real sector, as demonstrated in real GDP growth. The external sector, showing impressive external positions through trade and current account surpluses, and the performance of the financial sector, posting impressive financial ratios. Therefore, we need to ask President Mahama, how did he come by the conclusion that the economy was mismanaged? Ladies and gentlemen, the president tried to scare the Ghanaian people about the country's debt service obligations for the next 4 years, which according to him will amount to 280 billion Ghana cedis, comprising 150 billion Ghana cedis for domestic and 130 billion Ghana cedis in external debt servicing. Government, at every time, provides for debt servicing obligations, and the president is aware of this. We expect the president to mobilize the funds and stop complaining, such as what every government in Ghana has done to service our debts. The MPP did that when he left us with debts in 2017. Our debt management strategy has ensured that Ghana's debt levels have decreased substantially, and so are our debt service, taking a significant burden off the government. We have ensured that through strong negotiations, the servicing of Ghana's debts owed to our official bilateral creditors, $5.4 billion, has been rescheduled until after 2026. The NDC government didn't negotiate this. The agreement we reached with the Official Creditors Committee for Ghana entails a rescheduling of all debt service, principal and interest, falling due between 20th December 2023 to 31st December 2026. As a result, no debt service under bilateral debt will be paid until after 2026. I want to repeat that. No debt service under bilateral debt will be paid until after 2026, including the debt we didn't pay in 2023, since we declared the debt standstill. This was negotiated by the MPP government, that we will not pay our debts to our official creditors until after 2026. Ladies and gentlemen, the rescheduled amounts to be paid are expected to be repaid in 16 years and in 17 years respectively after their contractual due date. We'll start servicing after 2026, but the amount we are rescheduling between 2023 and 2026, we won't pay them at all until after 16 and 17 years when their contractual due date have expired. This is the work the MPP government has done. Delays in payments will be compensated for by interest accruing on the amounts at concessional rates ranging between 1% and 3%. This offer applies to all our official bilateral creditors and ECA-backed facilities signed and disbursed before end 2022. Ladies and gentlemen, as you can see, this provides briefing space for the new government. The MPP is not in government to benefit from this. It's briefing space, significant briefing space for the new government. Yet President Mahama will not talk about that. In addition, the debt service relief from this negotiation stands at $2.8 billion, which the government of Ghana would have paid, but which now stands as savings to the country. Again, President Mahama will not talk about this. Even with such a great work done by the MPP government, the president could not acknowledge it. Rather, he sought to take an end credit for it when he stated in his address, and I quote, "We signed a memorandum of understanding with our official creditor committee to formalize the debt treatment agreed upon with official creditors. This marks a crucial step towards Ghana's restoration of long-term sustainability. The agreement would enable financial resources to support and strengthen economic recovery," unquote. I say to Mr. President, you did not sign any MOU. What Ghana needed to do to reach an agreement was to express consent to the terms of the MOU in writing. This was done on 12 January 2024 to reach an agreement in principle, later firmed up after further negotiations in June 2024, which paved way for the second successful review of the IMF program implementation. The OCC members, the participating creditor countries, 25 of them, were those required to sign up individually, which all of them did, except 3 countries that delayed because of their long internal processes. These countries finally signed up in January 2025, and that is why President Mahama wants to take credit for this. Mr. President, you played no role in this. Apart from the rescheduling of debt service and savings from the negotiations with our official bilateral creditors, we also achieved debt cancellation, outright debt cancellation of almost $4 billion United States dollars. An additional debt service relief of $4.7 billion United States dollars through our negotiations with Ghana's Eurobond holders. This has reduced our debt levels, our public debt levels, from 78% of GDP to 72% of GDP. In fact, from September to October 2024 alone, our debt levels reduced by 68 billion Ghana cedis. It is instructive to note, therefore, that with a total public debt level of 721 billion Ghana cedis, which President Mahama was talking about, which is 72% of GDP, our record on debt sustainability is better compared with President Mahama's debt to GDP ratio of 73.1% by the end of 2016 when he left office. This, therefore, does not give the president a good standing to teach us lessons on debts. The energy sector debt at the beginning of 2017 stood at $2.5 billion. According to the Ghana Energy Sector Recovery Program, the energy sector was badly managed by President Mahama to the extent that the debts could reach $12 billion in 5 years if nothing was done about it. President Akufo Addo ensured that this did not happen, and we ended our administration with $2.4 billion debts in the energy sector, less than the $2.5 billion we inherited from President Mahama in 2016, and notwithstanding the fact that President Akufo Addo kept the lights on. How can you talk about the state of the nation without talking about the spate of violence and lawlessness that we are all witnesses to over the last 2 months? Ladies and gentlemen, I'll give you a few instances of this violence. At Ayenswano, angry youth set the Electoral Commission office ablaze. The standoff at the Ghana Gas headquarters, we all remember, where security forces fired warning shots to disperse a crowd of protesters belonging to the NDC. In Mamobi, hooded individuals parading through the streets on vehicles and motorbikes, disturbing everybody's peace, and nobody said anything to them. In Obuasi, civilians and party members were in direct showdown with military officers. Several shooting incidents led to 4 dead and many injured. In Damongo, frustrated youth stormed the Damongo Municipal Coalition Center and set the EC office ablaze. 1 person died and the office was burnt down. 8 suspects were also arrested for attacking the Metro Mass Transit workshop in Sunyani, Bono region. Suspects unlawfully entered the workshop premises and attacked and threatened workers, forcing them to flee. A wave of violence swept through Ejura police station as angry Zongo youth attacked a local police station, freeing suspects on remand and setting the police station on fire. The lifeless body of a final year biological sciences student of Kwame Nkrumah University of Science and Technology was discovered near the KNUST Disability and Rehabilitation Center. The Council of State Elections in the Ashanti region descended into chaos as a group of unidentified thugs stormed the election center, disrupting the sorting and counting of ballots. In Bunburugu Yinyo, chieftaincy clash have led to 4 people losing their lives. 4 students were arrested at Wager Divisional Police Command after a clash ensued between some students of Christian Methodist Senior High School and local youth over a missing mobile phone at the school premises at Aplako. 5 students sustained severe injuries, with several others suffering minor wounds after violence erupted during a peace ceremony between students of Boku Senior High School and Boku Technical Institute. 20 students from Salaga Senior High School in the East Gonja municipality of the Savannah region have been arrested following a violent clash that left 1 person with multiple stab wounds. It is sad, ladies and gentlemen, to mention that because of the insecurity in our country, the Electoral Commission has not been able to conclude Ablekuma parliamentary election declaration.
Which we won. That we won.
This certainly is a dark spot in our democratic dispensation, given that the people of Ablekuma North are currently not having a representative in parliament. Insecurity in the Boku area continues to heighten in recent times, with a woman and her 2 children being tragically murdered in their home by gunmen on February 9, 2025. Again, on February 25, 2025, a 13-year-old boy was killed in the same township. The indiscriminate killing of the indigenes of Waliwali and its environs is getting out of hand, and the imposition of curfew in the area is making it difficult for our Muslim brothers and sisters to wake up at dawn to eat and start their fasting. Government needs to decouple politics from security and ensure that every Ghanaian is protected. Mr. President, the security situation in our country is indeed very worrying. As you refuse to act decisively, the security agencies have become powerless, and this continues to embolden thugs of your party who visit mayhem on innocent Ghanaians daily. Sadly, the homes of some former public servants have been raided in Rambo style. That can only be akin to what happens in a military coup d'etat. For many Ghanaians, this is reminding them of the dark days of our nation's history. The president must act, and indeed, action is required now. Rather strangely, whilst officials of the MPP administration are being harassed and investigated, former officials of the NDC government who were on judicial trial have been cleared of all criminal charges against them, and in some cases have been rewarded with juicy appointments, like the current governor of the Bank of Ghana.
Yes.
Today, we are being told that crime has party colors, and our country has been turned into an animal farm, where 4 legs good, 2 legs bad. In conclusion, ladies and gentlemen, we, the mighty minority, are ready to do our work. We are ready to do our work to provide truthful information to the Ghanaian people on the affairs of our nation, especially as the government is holding a national economic dialogue, which is intended to whitewash the unfounded and baseless claims of the mismanagement of our economy under the SWAL MPP administration. That is what they are doing there. They are even scaring the people of Ghana further by putting out an audited outstanding claims on government. And we will expose this mischief at the right time. Yes. We believe that these unholy moves by the NDC are intended to buy time to cover for its incompetence in managing the economy and to establish the basis for increasing taxes and introducing new taxes in the 2025 budget statement, even as they are promising to scrap e-levy, COVID levy, and others. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to ask you, does it make sense to scrap e-levy and betting tax and replace them with new taxes on the telecommunication industry? They are bringing back VAT on telecommunication. They are increasing the growth and sustainability levy on the mining industry. And they are bringing back VAT on the financial services and real estate industries.
Wow. Wait, airlines.
All these taxes will be passed on to customers, to the Ghanaian people. The people of Ghana should wait for the deception of the NDC government when they present the 2025 budget. Sakawa. Taxes galore. Sakawa. This is how they intend to tax Ghanaians to collect their target of 200 billion Ghana cedis in tax revenues this year. This NDC government accused us, the MPP administration, of overtaxing the people of Ghana, because by the end of 2024, the MPP administration collected 152.9 billion Ghana cedis, and that was 17% tax to GDP ratio, taking it from President Mahama's 13% in 2016. How do you then turn around to expect to collect 200 billion Ghana cedis in an economy you call a broken economy? Ladies and gentlemen, we, the mighty minority, will join the people of Ghana to resist any attempt to smuggle in new taxes or increase existing taxes. We owe it a duty to hold the government accountable for their promises to the people of Ghana. We can only accommodate scrapping of taxes. Yes. We cannot accept new taxes or increase in taxes. Ladies and gentlemen, as a country, we have come a long way, working closely with our key stakeholders, including the IMF, World Bank, the African Development Bank, our bilateral partners, domestic and international investors, and more importantly, the Ghanaian people, who have sacrificed so much to see us get this far. We can assure you all that our partners and most of the people of Ghana are not happy because the president used his State of the Nation address, in fact, the false State of the Nation address, to reverse the gains made, especially towards building confidence with investors. The president has painted the picture of a country that has been economically mismanaged, when in fact, we have turned the corner from what we have all come to know was the worst economic crisis in Ghana following an unprecedented global crisis between 2020 and 2022. Even when they were confronted with a domestic challenge in the form of doomsday, they ran to the IMF to save the economy. How much more a crisis that plagued the entire world, including our country, and in no mean a proportion. What the president has done is like putting a gun on one's head and pulling the trigger. Investors had felt the hope of a resurgent economy in Ghana, and were looking forward to the new things the president was bringing to consolidate the gains. The president has effectively told them to go away because the economy is in crisis, contrary to the evidence. The cost of living crisis is a global problem. It's a global problem. And